This Veterans History Project interview is with Lieutenant General Leslie C. Smith, United States Army retired, on November the 4th, 2024, at the Association of the United States Army in Arlington, Virginia. General Smith, to begin, thank you for your many years of service to our nation and to the Army. And how many years did you serve in the Army, at what rank, and what position or responsibility did you retire?
Hey, Mark, thanks so much for taking time to do this interview. I retired as the Army's Inspector General after 35 years of service to the Army and Nation.
Thank you. And would you please share with us a bit about your childhood, your parents, schools and college, and what led you to join the Army?
Yeah. So my folks from Mississippi, my dad from Mount Bayou, my mom from Columbus, they met at college, and then the rest is history, as you say. And I chose to join the military because everybody in my family served. So my dad served, his brothers served. They were all drafted, for World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam. But they all served. That was something that me and my brothers and sister all wanted to do. We lost him at the age of 5, but it's something that we wanted to do as kids growing up because that's what the village told us was important.
Excellent, thank you. And then following your commissioning to second lieutenant, please tell us about your initial training, your first assignments, and please tell us about any leaders who really impacted you in these early years.
Yeah, that's a loaded question in itself. So I was in the Georgia Army National Guard, and you're going to hear me talk about the village many times, but the village was what showed us who we were supposed to be. And I think for me, as a high school senior, my senior Army instructor, the ones at high school ROTC, said, "Hey, Cadet Smith, what do you want to do?" And I'm thinking, I don't know. I want to go to college for business. Did you ever think about joining the Georgia Army National Guard or the Army Reserve? Never had. So I enlisted in the reserves, then transferred over to the National Guard and started training at Georgia Southern. The reason why that's significant is because I was a freshman in the ROTC program. So there's a 4-year program for ROTC. So I became a junior in the ROTC program as a freshman. So I had to grow up fast.
Yes.
And I got commissioned after my second year in the Georgia National Guard. So I spent that 4 years getting a lot of experience, which helped me when I became a lieutenant on active duty. And that's another great story. How much detail you want to go? A lot?
Sure.
Sure, okay. So I got branched as a chemical officer. And no one knew at my university what a chemical officer was. And I didn't know. They gave me this little thing that says 74. Like, you're going to be wearing a mask all the time. You know what happens now when I show up to Georgia Southern? They're like, oh, this is great. But the point was, that was during the Reagan buildup era. You probably remember that.
Yes.
1986 time frame. And so they were sending so many leaders over to Germany to show that strength. So I went to an air defense unit there. But during the basic course, it was great because I had a great leader there that taught us how to be good soldiers. Soldiers first, and then our branch second. Great non-commissioned officers that were there. And I mean, so many folks that were there. So I mean, I've been to some different places. Wilflecken, Germany, a lot of people like, why Wilflecken? But there are mentors throughout all of those assignments that told me what things to do and what places to go to. And I just chose to listen to them. And it was great. So many folks that said, how are you supposed to operate? But all of them said, you need to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And then for your listeners know that, being a Fort Liberty, it's a tough location, especially if you're jumping out of perfectly good airplanes.
Right.
You got to be physically fit. You got to be mentally fit. You got to be emotionally fit, but it's a tough unit, a tough organization, a lot of tough things that are going on that you need to do. And so one of those mentors was there that said, you got to meet somebody new every day. His name was Major General retired Abe Turner. I'm like, okay, why do you need to do that? He said, because I told you to. But what it showed me was everybody wants to succeed. So if you think about it, young captain trying to figure out company command and everything else. Once he told me that, it changed how I looked at things and looked at people.
Very good, thank you. And as you progressed in rank in the Army, how did the schools you attended, along with your Army training and the mentoring you received, help you to develop and grow as a soldier and a leader?
Yeah, that's a very good story. You know, everyone, you're going to learn a lot from many different people. So uh, at Fort Bragg at that time, it was now General Vi was there, General retired Vi, um, General Rodriguez. These are all retired 4 stars now. General, former Force Commander. I can't remember his name. Um,
It'll
but
come to you.
so many leaders that were there at the time frame that showed us what things we needed to do. And I think General King was there. It's just so many leaders that were there that showed us how we're supposed to operate, how we're supposed to act. I mean, General Austin was also there as a battalion commander. General Rodriguez, General Shelton, all those leaders that were there. Sergeant Major England that showed us what right looked like. And so it helps you as you get involved with those leaders to see how they operate. And all you have to do is emulate that as you grow. But the other thing that he told me is I always pick tough locations and tough jobs and tough assignments.
Yes.
So I already had a tough branch being a chemical officer,
Yes.
which is tough to do. But so I picked Fort Bragg. I picked going to South Korea. I picked, I didn't pick going to Fort Polk for battalion command, but it worked out perfect because of the missions and jobs that we were called to do. So every job builds upon each other, but you just don't know it at the time.
And could you explain a little bit, please, when you were a lieutenant
Sure.
and a captain, how did the non-commissioned officers
yes.
help you develop as a professional?
Most definitely. Even before that, way back at Georgia Southern, I had a non-commissioned officer named William Sanders, Sergeant First Class William Sanders. And if you picture in your mind's eye a guy about 5'5", but all muscle, right? And so he said, look, he was a Vietnam era veteran. So he said, I had a lieutenant who had got his platoon killed. If you listen to me, we will make sure that you're going to be a successful lieutenant. So not only did we do what we're supposed to do every day,
right,
but in the summers, if you were at Georgia Southern in the summer time frame, you were doing workouts 2-a-days. 2-a-day workouts plus you had to either ride a bike or run to the gym. So I was like, oh my goodness. So it was like, so by the time I finished that time frame, I was mentally and physically prepared to do the things that I needed to do. And those non-commissioned officers, no one is more professional than I. Competence is our watchword. Officers will have maximum time to do their job. They won't have to do mine. I learned that from an NCO so I could know what I needed to do. I think if we understand the role and responsibilities that we all play, then we can all execute our tasks. So NCOs are the key, really, to officer development and success. All we have to do is listen, because they show you how you're supposed to operate. We can never, that's what makes our Army strong, but really our nation strong because of the things that we've learned from our non-commissioned officers.
Thank you. And also, what was it like being part of a team and leading soldiers?
Yeah.
How did working, training, fighting as a team of soldiers impact upon you?
Yeah. As I mentioned before, everybody wants to find a village, right? And the Army is the ultimate village. Wherever you go, you're always going to have a team. Some of those people are going to know before, some of those people are going to be brand new, but they all are focused on the same mission. And then so as you go higher up in the ranks, you realize that you're the person responsible for the vision, direction, climate, culture in the organization. But you take it on based off the leaders that you see. It's like, yeah, I like that. Or no, I don't like that. Those are things that you want to do. And I think it's everything. And since now, as being retired, and the things I do with Georgia Southern teaching, the corporate boards I sit on, and here at AUSA, it's the same thing. Corporate America needs it. Our young people want it. They want a good leader who understands vision, direction, and guidance. And so part of the reason I took this job is because of the mission that we have to do to help educate, inform, and connect here at AUSA. It's so important. Now, we're talking about not just for the Army, we're talking about for America. So it's business, it's industry, it's academia, it's military. Everybody wants the same thing. They want a good leader who can give them vision and direction to where they're going to go.
Thank you. And your explanation about the Army as a village is a great transition to the Army family.
Yes.
So being married and having a family while serving the Army must have had some challenges, but also some truly special experiences.
Yeah.
And the Army is a family and a family of families.
Hmm.
So would
Team
you,
of teams, right?
yes,
Yeah.
and so would you please share with us a bit about about how Army families and your own personal family
Yeah.
experiences?
Yeah. It was great. So my wife and I, Vanita, dated for several years before we got married. Came to Germany, and then we got married a year before we PCS back. So, when a spouse is on the scene, it changes the calculus about where you're going to stay, what you're going to do. But it was a great time from that. And then the kids show up, and it really changes the dynamics of what things you got to have consideration for and what things you're going to do. I would say, from a good perspective, your family gets a chance to see and understand cultures better than anybody else. From a negative, if it's not operated the right way or worked the right way, it could be a we versus they, when in fact it's us. And then we collectively have to help each other understand what those things are and what things we have to do, because we're all in this thing together. And
Right.
then the higher you go, the more you have to emulate how you're supposed to operate. Like, be real. Like, I would put events, and I think try to do it sometime here too. If I was doing stuff with the kids or doing stuff with the family, on the calendar, so people would know, oh, he is a normal person. He's a human being. Oh, he's going to a volleyball game. Oh, he's going to a dance recital. Oh, wow. So that means I'm free my people up in order to do the same type of things. And then there were tough times. We didn't move our youngest during her senior year in high school, just because she's different than the oldest. And it's just different of different things. Every kid is different. Every kid responds to things differently, and you have to be willing to do that. The other part I want to talk about
Please.
is is that you got to understand what your role and responsibility that you have. Now, especially as a service member, if you think you're running your house every day, you're
Mhm.
not. Especially the first time you go somewhere, to the field or to a deployment, things you come back is going to be different. You got to be willing to understand and then ease back into the situation.
Thank you. And would you please highlight your command assignments and the combat deployments during your career?
Yeah. So I commanded at every level, from lieutenant all the way up to, I guess, inspector general. It is a command position. So that's 35 years of doing stuff. Staff in that too. So uh, company command in the 82nd, battalion command at Fort Polk, brigade command at Fort Leonard Wood, one-star command at Leonard Wood, one-star command at Aberdeen Proving Ground, which is in the 20th Suburban. Uh, then back to being the commanding general, Fort Leonard Wood, then the deputy inspector general, then the inspector general for the Army. And within those jobs, as a young captain, I deployed as part of Desert Shield, Desert Storm. A very interesting time from that time frame. And then as a lieutenant colonel, battalion commander, OEF, OIF, and Operations New Dawn.
Thank you. And what leadership traits did you see in others during your command assignments, or throughout your career, leadership traits? And what ones really stood out to you that you try now to,
Emulate.
yes,
Yeah.
and to encourage
Yeah,
others?
sure. So I think the biggest thing is it's about trust. So the leader's responsible for setting trust, building trust within the organization. And there's many ways of doing it. I've seen leaders do it via golf tournaments. I've seen leaders do it via right arm nights, so things that grew up in the military, going with your sergeant major, your senior NCO to the club, and many times bringing your spouse or family that were there, so people would know that you're a normal person. I think also this thing on being serious about counseling and actually getting after talking with your people and making sure that you understand that their goals and objectives, just like we talk about here, is your goals and objectives are as important to me as my goals and objectives. If I help you achieve yours, that's how we achieve ours as a team. And we got a lot of times take the vision off ourselves to do those type of things.
Thank you. And we just discussed that how during your Army career, the leadership lessons that you developed, learned, that you carry with you today.
Mm-hmm.
And now, what did you do after retiring from the Army? You mentioned it, but if you
Yeah,
discuss
sure.
you completed your
35 years, yes.
an IG of the United States
Yes.
Army, and then you transitioned out, and you and leadership has been a theme for you throughout your career.
Sure.
So how did you carry that with you? What are you doing now, and
Yeah.
how do you continue to leverage what you learned in the Army to help others?
Yes. Very good. So in the job as the Inspector General, the IG, the TIG as they call them, is responsible for inspections, assistance, and investigations for 1.3 million soldiers and civilians. So a lot of people are like, oh, the IG, they're out to get people. They're really not. They're responsible for efficiency, effectiveness of the organization. They work for the Secretary and the Chief. So in that job, I chose to be a preventive IG. What do I mean by that? I would tell leaders about these are some pitfalls that you would have to do and understand of how you don't, what would happen if you don't. The reason why I was very attuned to it because I did the other job, the 2-star job for 2.5 years. So I saw the impact of people either not understanding or walking into an ambush that was set for them. So I chose to do that. So when I was in that job, someone else was supposed to be the Inspector General. So I had started my process to transition out of the Army. So I once I got selected for my 3rd star, I full speed ahead. But I was thinking about, hey, this is probably going to be a terminal assignment, which the Inspector General normally is. So I started talking to people about what would be next. And that's another thing I think we owe as a leader. We owe to our people a successful transition, both in and out. If you have a good transition out, then you allow other people to do that. Many leaders, they call it running through the tape. I'm going to run through the tape and I'm going to have my retirement ceremony. And I'm going to turn around and I'm going to say, we love you, but hey, you're done. So you have to transition well. You got to take care of your family, where they're going to live. You got to take care of what things do you want to do? What's your purpose? You've had this purpose for 35 years. What's your next purpose going to be? How are you going to, what type of work you want to do across the board? So I started talking to leaders, many mentors, both at ASNA, MNRA, the vice, the chief, the under, the secretary. I was talking to all those guys, I mean, current serving and others, about what options of things that were there. So I developed a board practice first because people find out that you're leaving and everybody has a reputation, right? It's going to be one way or the other. So I had 2 to 3 people come in to me and say, hey, you ever thought about joining a board of directors? I'm like, I don't know. And so they said these options were there. So I had 3 board opportunities available to me before I left active duty. Same thing with Georgia Southern. They asked me to come teach leadership when I was a 2-star. I was like, hey, I made my 3rd star, so I can't. So now I teach leadership at Georgia Southern, not to the RTC department, but to the College of Business. And the best thing about that is that you get a chance to see what this thing that we know works, talk to people that are not in uniform. Every class without fail, someone comes up and says, how can I get some of that? And I'm not recruiting them for the Army. I'm recruiting them for life, right? So we're talking about, okay, is this something you want to do? Fine. Let's take you over to see the ROTC guys. What do you want to do? You want to go work at Boys and Girls Club? Do you want to go work with, troops to teachers? I don't know. Whatever those things are that you want to do, our job is to help them see what they can't be. That's one of my phrases, that you can't be what you can't see. So if I can show you what the options and opportunities are. And then about 6 to 9 months before I left, General Brown, who I've known for a long time, says, hey, Les, what, you going to stay in the DC area? I'm like, I am. Because, we have a daughter that just finished Howard Medical School. So we're going to stay in the area. So you ever thought about doing the job of being a VP for AUSA? And what intrigued me was because we were starting up the Center for Leadership. So you see that correlation.
Yes.
Standing up the Center for Leadership. I teach leadership at Georgia Southern. So it was symbiotic. So things I'm learning at AUSA, I'm taking to Georgia Southern. Things I'm learning at Georgia Southern, I'm taking to AUSA. And then in the interim, we're doing so many things to help the Center for Leadership get more out there. We do stuff with Fort Stewart every year. This will be our 2nd year in a row now doing things with the Center for Leadership and AUSA and the College of Business for Georgia Southern and the RTC department down there. So I think I transitioned successfully to that program because it really is about setting the condition for other people so they can see how you operate, and it frees them up to do it too.
Thank you. And if I could highlight or summarize a
Sure.
couple of the points you made. So when you were the Army IG, you mentioned how you pursued preventive
Yes. Measures.
leadership.
Yes.
But knowing you to be a positive person and a proactive person, that ties in really well with preventive leadership, preventive helping
Yes.
the Army senior leadership, the
Yes.
Secretary and the Chief,
Yes.
to take action in a positive
Yes.
way to help the Army.
Yeah. So
And,
so kind of one of the things that we did to do that was that we would publish at least monthly electronic newsletters talking about the trends. And then we would encourage the commands, because the commands have inspectors generals too, and each one of them is a little different about what the commander wants to see, what the commander wants to do. But they would tweak their inputs or outputs that they wanted to put out to their command based, excuse me, on some of the things that we did across the board. Because I tell them, look, our job is to reduce the number of allegations that we have to look into. We got to look into every allegation. But if we communicate and everybody understands, this is my intent. You know, you can give a mission, but you got to give a task and a purpose so people understand where you're coming from. Just give somebody a task, they're like, why do I need to do it? Once you tell somebody the purpose, they're like, okay, either they're going to get it or they're not going to get it. If they don't get it, you got to take some time to explain. If they don't, then we got to have a conversation. It's all about communication.
yes, indeed. And the Army has some strategic strengths, such as the non-commissioned officer corps,
Yeah, sure.
and leadership. The Army teaches leadership. The Army says that the Army equips the soldier to accomplish the mission, as opposed to the soldier manning the equipment. It's all about leadership in the Army, and you've taken this to the Association of the United States Army and into your board work. So as you reflect upon the importance of leadership and the value of the Army, would you recommend service for young people in the United States Army?
Most definitely. The reason why is because first I was telling them, don't believe the hype. Don't look at Instagram. Don't look at X or even LinkedIn to say about what they see. You want to find what you're called to do. There are many people that have jobs today who hate what they do. I never hated any day of my service. I don't hate what I do today, right? But you gotta tap into it. But then it has to happen at the individual level. So think about that all the way back from that high school ROTC instructor. How many young people did he have the conversation about joining the Georgia National Guard or the reserves? I don't know, because I know he talked to me, but did he talk to somebody else? What would have happened if he would not have said that? I don't know. Would I have still joined? Would I have gone there? And I didn't tell you the rest of the story. We went to Georgia Southern with my buddy. I didn't even know the school existed. Their program was just starting up ROTC. That's how I got into the simultaneous membership programs, I say, with the Georgia Guard and get commission. But you got to go to places, you got to do things so those opportunities manifest themselves. Here's something else. This is pretty heavy. I hope you can handle it. There are people, right, that are counting on you to do what you got to do so they can do what they got to do.
Yes.
So think about it. Me coming to AUSA, if I hadn't come, I would have never met Mark. I would have never met John. I would have never met all the directors and everybody else that we have in the team. And we would be doing well, but we're doing so much better because of the team that we have in place right now to do the missions that we're called to do.
Yes.
That makes sense?
Yes, indeed. Okay. Empowering leaders.
That's right.
And so now, Lieutenant General Smith, what concluding comments would you like to make with regards to our discussion and your life's experience? And if you could highlight in particular the importance of leadership.
Yeah. I think everyone is called to do a mission and a task. And I really want everybody to focus on what they're called to do, not what the other person's called to do. Because if you focus on what you're called to do and you're ready to do it 100%, then you'll be successful. Listen to those people who are pushing you in the directions that you need to be, because our nation needs it. This cannot be legislated, nor should it be. But this village, as I was talking about, we're responsible for that microcosm. But as a young person grows, right, the village is like, oh, this is great. This is success. Just like I was telling you about my nephew. Yes. Hey, so great, so glad. So they understand what part they're coming from, right? And as you grow, your village expands. And that village is there to help people succeed. help
Yes.
younger people succeed, help older people continue to execute the mission and task. If we understand that I am my brother's keeper and I am responsible for what happens around me, then it changes the mindset. It can't be just my three and me, or my four and me, because what I do impacts you. What you do impacts me. And then the more I know about you, the more I can feel who you are and understand I can help you accomplish your goals, which in turn helps us accomplish their goals, whatever that us is.
Yes.
And then we collectively, we veterans, owe a responsibility to tell our story, but tell it from our perspective. If it's something that you don't know or don't understand, don't speak from something that you don't know of. Speak from what you know and understand what those things are. I'm not saying make it Pollyannish. No, I'm saying tell the story, encourage the people who can do it. So if it was good for you, it'll be good for somebody else.
Thank you, General Smith. And would you please discuss with us the deployments you had during your career and how leadership mattered?
That's a great question. As a young captain deploying in part of Desert Shield, Desert Storm in 1990 was very interesting. So I get to the unit. Next thing I know, our unit gets deployed. When you're in 82nd, 18 hours wheels up.
Right.
And so I didn't understand at the time, but 6 months prior to that, we were on an exercise looking to see what would happen if another country invaded Kuwait. What I did know, but I'm sure they were planning that Iraq was thinking about doing the same type of thing. So when we get there as a young captain, I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. And I saw leaders executing meetings and missions that I didn't understand how critical it was. But then as a chemical officer, I was right in the center of everything because of the weapons of mass destruction that we were concerned about, even in the 90s, of what people were looking at me like, is my mask right? Did I need to do those things? And you fast forward to where you are as a battalion commander, thinking about OIF after 9/11. So I was in the Pentagon in July. I left in July. And then September 11th happens. I'm doing physical training. The DCG for 18th Airborne Corps is there when the plane's going to the Pentagon. He says, men, I think it was only men in the room that day, we will be going to war somewhere, I don't know when. From that time frame for the next 2 years, our unit deployed about 550 soldiers, either in or out, every 90 days. So a little battalion out of Fort Polk, now Fort Johnson, Louisiana. I don't know if you ever been up to Alexandria Airport. We did that, I can't tell you how many times. I can see that road with my eyes closed. But I saw soldiers and I saw leaders doing all the things that were required. Some of the things we talked about earlier was about building trust, right? How do you do that? You do that via hard PT, about clear goals and objectives. And since I came from the 82nd, we set up an element of that battalion, as small as it was, to be ready to deploy. So it was a mindset shift, right? My previous battalion commander, who I replaced, great guy, he started the process and I just continued it. So that means we had everything weighed out. We had people ready to go from a mission set. And so when 9/11 happened, we were already ready to go. Our equipment was up, our paperwork was up, our medical was up, and we were ready to go. And so we deployed folks to, during that time frame, around the Pentagon, to South Korea because of the World Cup, to Iraq, to Afghanistan, to Ethiopia, to Djibouti, to Jordan, to so many places. And it surprised me the ability for those folks to do what they needed to do. And then fast forward to being the commanding general of the 20th Suburban, had a chance to see so many young men and women who put their lives on the line. And during that time frame, during my 3 years there, we lost 13 soldiers. And you've been in my office, you've seen some of those pictures that are there.
Yes.
And so many others that were wounded, but they all stood up to do what was required to execute the mission because it was what the right thing was to do because we were attacked and the mission sets that we had to do across the board. And those Suburban and explosive ordnance disposal guys and all the teams associated with them stood up to the task to support special ops, to support convention units, to support DHS, to support the FBI, support the Department of Energy, stuff that I didn't understand, I didn't know ahead of time, but it was all in preparation of things I had done in the past.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
So thank you for this discussion on CBRN, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear.
Yes.
So a low density, high demand type
Yes.
of a skill set. So and this just speaks to the Army, many specialties,
Yes.
way beyond infantry, artillery,
Yes.
and armor,
Yes.
and how important it is, no matter what the specialty is, to be the best soldier you
That's
can
right.
be, but also the opportunities that were extended to you
Yeah.
still rise
Yes.
to very senior ranks in the Army.
Yes.
Could you discuss that a little bit about
Yeah.
how important it is just to do your best
Yeah.
and not worry so much about some of the small details about?
Yeah. I always, and I learned this back at Fort Bragg, Fort Liberty now, was the Army wants to pick the best athlete most of the time to do the task. So if you're the best athlete, regardless of whatever your branch is, unless it's a certain specific mission and task, you can get picked for it. So I was the first chemical officer to be the 20th Suburban Commander. Don't ask me why. It just happened at the time.
Yes.
So I was prepared to do that because I was a G3 prior to that time frame. I was the first chemical officer to command Fort Leonard Wood, right? Because I'd already been as a colonel.
Yes.
I'd already been as a 1-star. So it was natural. And I was the first chemical officer to be the Inspector General. And so that comes down to, do you have the ability to build trust with the people that you're around?
Yes.
Can you do your task? Can you do your mission? And can you build a good team? And that's the thing that's important. And that team, regardless of whatever it is, you got to learn every day. I'm still learning about different things that you're doing. And I listen to other folks. And I'm not ashamed to ask questions if I don't know about something.
Thank you. And then as we conclude, would you please discuss a little bit more about opportunities? The Army provides opportunities. Sure. And for someone who is positive and desires to excel, the sky's really the limit in the Army.
It is. I think there's over 150 occupational specialties, an officer enlisted side of jobs you can do, from welding to electrician to explosive ordnance disposal to infantry, armor, field artillery, cybersecurity. I mean, there's so many jobs that are there. Everything that you can think of in the civilian sector, most of it is in the military. But you will also find at the same time a sense of purpose, a sense of camaraderie, a sense of discipline, a sense of standard, a system of customs and traditions that I think sometimes are lost in the rest of the United States and really sometimes the world. And that's what I was talking about, that village of somebody that shows you what the standard is, holds you to that standard, and you're like, wow, this is something that I can do. And this thing about when we say, it's not just a trite phrase to say, be all you can be. And so I was in the military for 35 years. My brother was in the Army for 3.5 years as a logistician. Now he's a CPA working with a company. And then my sister was in the Marine Corps and her husband. And now, my daughter decided she wants to be an Army doc. I was glad because I had to pay for medical school. But she's found that sense of purpose. And I think the family also finds a sense of purpose because we're not better than other people, but we understand what this thing means to serve. And that's what young people want. And it's our job to tell them that.
Again, Joseph, thank you very much for this discussion today with the Veterans History Project and your examples that you have provided to us on how important service has been to you and how you've striven to be your best, to be a leader, and to help others. Thank you.
You're welcome.